Hi, this is Junaid, neurocritical care, stroke, and epilepsy specialist. Today we're going to talk about residency interview basics. Look, there are only two important things that you really need to understand. Number one is empathy, and number two is interviewing is a skill. You require practice. So let's start with empathy. Empathy basically is defined as if you are able to walk in another person's shoe. You understand exactly what that person is actually intending, what that person requires out of you in that process. And once you understand that, you can tailor your responses, and that will be the most important, impressive thing you can do for yourself. Look, empathy is extremely important. It is considered the most important leadership skill, and it is, as a physician, you need to take care of the patients. So if you really understand what the patient is coming from and what their actual needs are, you're going to be an extremely successful physician in the first place. So as a skill, it is extremely important for you to develop as a physician in the first place. So let's start what really empathy means. So empathy basically means is that you understand the mindset of the next person. So before we start, let's just get the mindset correct. If you got the interview, there's a 90% chance that you're going to end up getting ranked. Really, you want to have a big blunder not to get ranked. So the important question over here is that are you going to get ranked? The important question is how high you're going to get ranked. And given the overall changes in the USMLEs, considering USMLE step 1 is now pass and fail, we are giving more and more importance to soft skills, including empathy, including dynamism, including confidence, etc. So those are the things that we are actually more important nowadays, especially in the new remote culture that we are in. So it's very important that you understand the mindset. A match, it is a match. It is not a lottery, okay? So don't get overwhelmed about it. The minute you got the interview, you are getting ranked. The real issue is how high will you be ranked? And that's where the practice comes in. I'm going to keep honing on that point because you need to practice. A skill is something that you develop not by talent. It is something you develop by practice. Okay, so empathy, right? I mean, what is really the program looking for? The program is looking for a good resident. So the first question is, how do you define a good resident, right? So the way I define it is a AAA team. A, and then team. So the first A is basically available. A person who's responsive. I mean, really by definition, if you're going to use the word responsible, it really literally means response able. You are able to, answer your paces. You're available for the meetings. You're making sure that you're on time. You have your priorities correct. You are a responsible adult. You are available. That's number one thing. If you have any examples in your interview that shows that you are responsible, make sure you bring that out. Number two, agile. Look, residency is going to be the hardest 4 years of your life, especially in neurology is considered 3 years of internal medicine. And you need to have different forms of external environments that are going to go through. I mean, you're going to have an ICU environment, outpatient environment, rehab environment, tons of environments. Those are different external factors that are going to affect you as a person. The agility in you is how you respond best with changing external environments. And that's, again, very important that you bring that out. In my example, I did that by, I went to Pakistan where there was an earthquake. I made sure that they understand that, that was a very good volunteer experience. And I told them that how agile I was in resource allocation and being a team leader. No matter what example you come up with, it is important that you do come up with a good example that highlights your agility, your response to external environment in a thoughtful, resourceful way. Number three, adaptable. Now, clearly you went into a training, right? For you to learn. If you do not have a learning mindset, if you do not have an adaptable mindset in which by the learning you change your own beliefs, your own situations so that you take care of the patient with the new evidence, that is the key important thing we're looking for in a physician in general. I mean, if I'm even hiring and attending as a VP of telehealth company, I'm making sure that these people are adaptable to more and more new evidence. Because if you are stuck in your mindset and not adaptable, that's something is a very bad situation that directly leads to those people who are not team players. Because there's situational awareness that you need to be aware of, both in agility and adaptability. So you have to make sure that you highlight examples that exemplifies you as a team player, because that's the key important thing when you're looking for clinical job nowadays, because this is a team sport. You are not a solo runner here with the rest of the competition. You are working as a team. So it's extremely important that you're working as a team, and as a whole system, you're a team as well. There's no competition with your peers. So it's extremely important you figure that out and you make sure you exemplify those examples when you're giving the interview. So that's number one. What they're looking for is a good resident. That's empathy, right? You're thinking of that. Very important. What is the second thing they're looking for? What is the main purpose of the interview? To find a good resident. So how do you find a good resident? It is for a job, right? Residency is basically a job. The job entails two things. Number one is that it is a clinical job. In clinical job, again, it requires you to be a team player. It requires you to be resilient. It requires you to be hardworking. As I told you, these are the few things that are extremely important. Again, when you're interviewing, make sure these things come up. The examples that you're going to share, the way you're going to talk about these things, about yourself, you have to make sure that these qualities about yourself are highlighted. Number two, it is a clinical training. You have to show that you're an active learner, you're an enthusiastic learner, you actually are very resourceful in learning and you enjoy learning, for God's sakes. These are the very key important things that we want to make sure that they understand about you. Again, make sure once you have that mindset, once you have that empathetic mindset, that you understand what the next person is looking for, how do you adjust your answers? We all know that. Every one of you who is applying has done med school, has worked really hard, done some research. We understand all of you have it. It's not about having it. Everyone has it. It is how you show that you have it. And that's extremely important, that you actually make sure that you are highlighting these things throughout the interview so that the next person understands that these are the qualities that you define yourself with, and therefore they should take you into the residency. This is how you sell yourself. And if there's a question like, why should I take you? These are the things you're going to tell them. I'm a team player. I'm resilient. I'm hardworking. I'm eternally curious. I enjoy learning, and I'm very resourceful in terms of both clinical management and learning. Make sure you do that. Okay, that's another thing. Like, why do we do it in person? Look, the way human beings are communicating, it is not just words. It is tonality of the voice. It is body language. Do you see why I have framed myself? And this is going to be the second lecture, part 2. So just so that you know, there are going to be a part 2 of this lecture in which we're going to talk about basics of virtual residence interview, how to shine on Zoom. Unfortunately, it is the days in which the interviews are virtually done through Zoom or other online resource medias or online video chat services. What we need to understand is that how we make sure we sign on that. There's a reason that I have this up here, a little bit of space, and I'll talk to you about framing. Practically my whole body is showing, my hands are showing that I can communicate to you enthusiastically that how or why this is important. So that's why we do it in person, because we understand that it is so important, especially in medicine. It is not a remote job, right? If I'm hiring a video editor or a graphic designer, I don't really care if the person is actually personable. As long as he's working creatively, I just need to see the examples, and that is it. You show me the CV, or even if the CV doesn't have an actual degree, I don't care anymore. I want to show your creative work, and that's it, and I hire you. This is not what medicine is. Medicine is a team sport. Medicine is a person thing. Medicine is somewhere you're going to deal with people, and people communicate 90-95% of the time with body language, with enthusiasm. You have to be able to communicate that. And that's why we do in-person and virtual interviews. Now that you have that in mind, this is empathy, right? That you understand that why we're doing it in a way we're doing it, you have to reframe the whole situation. How you're going to set up the camera, lights, etc. We're going to talk about that when we're talking about the second lecture, or we're in person eventually in future, maybe 2 years from now, you're seeing this lecture. You need to understand that body language is extremely important. And the reason behind that in medicine is why. Now, that was all empathy. Right? These are the few things that you understand: why, how, when, and understanding why we do the things the way we do it. Now let's talk about the second most important question, and that is a skill. Look, interviewing is a skill. You have to practice, practice, practice. For God's sakes, you have to practice. If you think you're doing it right, practice again. The more you practice, the better you are at. You'll have more concise answers. You'll have more ways to answer the same question in a way that is not boring to you or the other person. You'll have more variations of the same answer, so that if there is an epileptologist you're talking to, you're going to have a sort of slightly tilt towards EEG and things like detail orientation, while you're actually talking to neurohospice, neurocritical care, you're going to talk about agility and etc. So make sure you practice as much as you can. Do it every day. Do it in your sleep. Make sure you have a list of questions right next to your bedstand and you are answering them in your head all the time. Also record yourself, and I'll come to that in the next lecture more so than that. But either way, you have to record yourself and make sure that you listen back and you make sure that you are actually properly showing your body language and your enthusiasm with your hands and your mouth and your facial expressions. So number one, The most important thing, for God's sakes, be sure that you know yourself, right? I mean, if you don't know your own application, that just sucks. That's just really something that is unforgivable, because you don't know yourself, your own application. That's a big issue. I had 40 abstracts. I had to go back, reprint all those abstracts, read them again, actually highlight the people that I worked with, because you don't know who knows who. So I have to make sure that I know the updated information about each person that I've collaborated with, now where they are. Some people were at Cleveland Clinic, some people were anywhere else, and in that regard I was able to find that these people were important, and they asked me that question, hey, how was working with that person like? Who knows? So it's important that you actually always know your own application, and you also know the program, right? I mean, if you're not going to know the program or the specialty you're working in, it's just berserk. Seriously, like, you have to make sure that you know the specialty you're getting into. It is important that you understand how the United States medical system works in that particular subspecialty. It's very different for IMGs to really realize sometimes that how different the whole system works here. It is important you talk to people. You understand your own demands, challenges, and limitations of the specialty working in the United States, so that you know exactly what to expect and answer accordingly. And you can just say it. You know what? I understand that stroke is very challenging work and people are generally getting burned out. Even though that is the case, I really love the field because of this. So you know the challenges. It shows maturity on your part that you have done what you wanted to do. You wanted to know what exactly that subspecialty or specialty entails, and therefore you're prepared for it. Same thing, you need to know the program. Look, all programs have websites. They have program directors who have done, different interviews. They write snippets on it. Make sure you read them thoroughly. Make sure you understand what the different faculties are, what the different departments are, what are the research opportunities in that program. You really need to understand all that before you answer these questions, because it's extremely important that you tailor your questions according to the program needs as well. This is not being, lying or something like cheating. It is important that you wanted to get into a job, right? So what? You have to prepare for it. I prepared for a job I wanted to go into. So make sure you prepare for it. You research what the job is about, especially in terms of that specialty in the program, and make sure you know thyself, right? I mean, if you don't know thyself, then it's just like, seriously, what are you doing, right? So it's important that you do those two things very importantly. Again, I talked about communication before, body language. Make sure you show tonality. Make sure that you are animated during the program, because that's extremely important in terms of communication. It's just not about words. It's not content. It's about how you deliver that content. It's very, very, very important, especially nowadays, that presentation skills and all that are so available. Just search on YouTube and you're going to find so many things, and you should do that so that you have different perspectives, different ideas, different angles to which you can answer. So make sure you do that as well. Now, the most important thing about communication is listening. I ask a question and sometimes they're answering something else and I forget, like, what the hell did I ask? You see, it's extremely important you answer the darn question that is asked. So that's why I sometimes keep a notepad right next to me and write a keyword. And as a matter of fact, even when I'm asking a question as an interviewer, I actually do that too, because I wanted to make sure that these are the keywords that I wanted to ask a question. So there's a list of keywords that I write. And then when I'm interviewing, I just take a glance and say, okay, I'm going to ask this as the next question. It is so important that you answer the question that was actually asked. Listen, it is a skill. It is important. That's another thing that we're going to talk about in the next lecture, is how to pause appropriately and making sure that the person actually finishes the question rather than interrupting. That is important. That's one of the key things about listening, no interruptions. Now, confidence. Confidence is hard because you have to be very careful. You don't want to come out arrogant, but you also want to come out confident. You're going to be my representative. I'm going to be an attending. You're going to go see the patient on my behalf, then come and report to me. Then we're going to go see the patient together. This is the real way that, training works. So if you're going to be someone who is not confident and you're going to lose the confidence of the patient, it's just harder for me to get that, going again. Hey, your team sucks. What do you think I'm going to trust you? So it's extremely important that we hire confident physicians who are going to take over becoming attending next. So that's important. When do I grade someone A+? When they perform at a level higher than they're supposed to, when they show that level of maturity, when a fellow acts like an attending, when a resident acts like a fellow, when an intern acts like a resident. These are the things we're looking for. So when you show that level of confidence in a level of maturity in your interview, that is very important. This really gives an impressive thing about you in terms of me as a selection criteria in that process. Show interest, right? I mean, it seems basic that I have to say this, But believe it or not, it is not that, annoying sometimes that people don't even sometimes able to communicate interest. There are two ways to communicate interest: body language, and number two, ask appropriate questions about the program, right? I mean, you have to show interest in that particular program. And the way to show interest is that you have to ask the questions that are important to you for your career. Honest, real questions. Some things that you are going to be important for you. If you're going to want to be an epileptologist and you see that the program is not happy with epileptology, your whole CV is built with epileptology, you have to find out, right? I mean, is this something that you're going to be right for you? So it's important you do that. You ask pointed, appropriate questions with the program. I mean, the most important question that you can ask is that, especially with chairman and program directors, what are the strengths of the program? What are the weaknesses of the program? What is the future vision of the program? What are the ways that you're going to bring opportunities to us as far as, different learning opportunities in terms of program development, etc., etc. So it's leadership development. There's so many things you can ask that are general, but enough to actually show that you're absolutely interested in pursuing a career in that particular specialty, and also you like that program, you're going to come here, so therefore you want to make sure that you understand all the ins and outs of it. So those are the things that you have to understand, and then go from there. I'll take a break and I'll show you where this is so that you actually can go back and read up on it. So if you go to neurologypocketbook.com, and this will actually get up, you click on this, you go to match guide, you're going to go to residency interview guide, and then you're going to have all this lecture over here. So this is where the neurology pocketbook does come in. I mean, I literally ended up taking notes in my Notion, and then I was actually doing some more research, making sure that I looked at some articles, some videos, etc., so that there is comprehensive guide for you guys. And then the few students that really helped me are Roshan, Filza, Afira, and Umair, who helped me make this guide so much better. So we were co-editing in the same space, and therefore we made this guide so much quicker. It literally took me 6 hours to make this whole page. And because I was doing it while I was, first draft, put it all, everything that I need to discuss, and then go from there. And this is how we write chapters too. You are making whatever you're learning at that time, you take notes creatively, and once those notes are done, you can literally publish them into a book chapter. So this is why I love this platform, Notion as well, and the Neurology Pocketbook introduction videos, etc., are going to come next. So make sure you subscribe to the channel and understand that. So dress code. Now, look, it's important that you wear the full dress, but be comfortable. Right? You don't want to be in a space that is actually, suffocating you. It is not that, it's warm. Make sure you do that. Dress to impress. It's extremely important. Be punctual, for God's sakes. Like, I mean, if you're not going to show up on time, why on earth? Again, remember I told you the first important thing is available. And as a AAA resident, if you're not available on time, I can't trust you. And that's very important in medicine. Trust. Addressing people. Now, this is a little problematic. Nobody ever pronounced my last name correctly, and I don't care anymore. Everyone calls me Kalia. It's actually originally pronounced as Kalia. Who cares? I don't care, but there are people who really care about it. It is best to ask them how to address you, sir or ma'am. I'm sorry, I do not understand the pronunciation of your name. Can you please tell me so I can pronounce it correctly? There's nothing wrong with it. Ask it. Best thing is to ask the program coordinator beforehand. But if you can't, then ask the person. There's nothing wrong with it. So just ask how to address the person in general. People will say that, hey, you can just address me with your first name. Don't do that. I do that all the time, and I personally really don't care, but anyways, you should not do that. And if you ask, like, look, I come from a culture where we use last name for our teachers, so I would really appreciate it if I can just call you by your last name, and that's fine, because it's important. Even if they give you permission, at least the first interview, at least the first face-to-face meeting, you do not address them with their first names. Even with permission, try to just be professional, use the last names. And most importantly, follow up, right? I mean, if you're not going to follow up with the interview, that means that you're not showing interest. Now, people, including some of our program directors, have told us that it's not important because they're not going to read it, they're just going to delete it. That's fine. Do it. It doesn't matter. You have to show your interest, period. It doesn't matter what they perceive. So some of those times when I talk about empathy, you actually have to understand that, they are going to delete it or they're not going to actually view it, which is fine. But sometimes you have to communicate confidently what you want. And this is what you want, right? So just send a follow-up email at the end with memory triggers. And I used to put them in the subject line. Great discussion about telehealth with you. and then Dr. X, and then in the body you say, I really want to thank you that you took time to interview. I'm very grateful. If you have any questions about me, feel free to email me, etc. And if you want to send something like a chapbook PDF chapter of your neurology pocketbook, you can attach it in the follow-up email. So this way they also remember again that when the time comes for ranking, they really understand, oh wow, this is the guy I talked about telehealth with. This is the guy he sent me the PDF of the book chapter. This was a great guy. Let's rank him high. Again, these are memory triggers. By the time you actually do the interview, which is November, December, all the way to March, people are going to forget. So it's important you actually have some memory triggers, and that comes with research too. If you have researched a person, the faculty that you're going to come with interview with, there are 30 faculty members. You have to research every one of them. Maybe 8 or 9 are going to be interviewing you, but you research every one of them. Try to find memory triggers within that interview so that you are remembered. All right. So if you go to that website, there are other important points like, sit professionally, pronounce name correctly, etc. So you can read through all this and, key takeaways, etc. I'm going to see you in the second lecture, Basics of Virtual Residency Interview. Thank you. If you save a life, it is as if you saved the life of mankind. Please make sure you like, comment, share, and subscribe to my YouTube channel and my newsletter. If you want to get in touch with me, the best way is to go through Twitter or via LinkedIn. Also, make sure you follow the Academy website for regular updates. Thank you so much.